The question Anthony Espinosa's attorney asked my brother wasn't complicated, not if you'd designed the building. We were standing inside the Leland Iron Works, a restored warehouse near Portland's old rail yards. Bowman Architecture had renovated it in 1978. That made it the perfect place for our 50th anniversary gala. My mother had repeated that phrase for months. The perfect place. There were almost 200 people in the room. Staff, former clients, consultants, family friends, and several local design reporters. Behind the small stage, a screen showed a rendering of the new Espinosa Hotel. It was the biggest contract our firm had pursued in years, $18 million. My brother Ethan stood beside the rendering, holding a drink he hadn't touched. My mother, Donna, stood near him. She wore the dark green jacket she saved for major client meetings. I was at the end of the signing table with a heavy black binder in my hands. Anthony's attorney looked at Ethan and asked, "Can you explain why the South Stair enclosure uses the alternate compliance path?" Ethan smiled. He had a very good client smile. Warm, confident, slightly amused, as if the answer was interesting but obvious. Well, that was really a team decision. The attorney waited. Anthony waited too. Ethan glanced toward the screen. It came out of the broader design strategy. What part of the design strategy? The room hadn't gone silent yet. People were still talking near the bar. Silverware knocked against plates. Someone laughed by the freight doors. At our table, though, nobody moved. Ethan looked at me. Then my mother looked at me. Her eyes dropped to the binder in my hands. She made the smallest motion with 2 fingers, telling me to come closer. When I did, she leaned toward me and spoke quietly. "Let her present your work." She said it to Ethan, not to me. I was supposed to explain the code decision, walk the attorney through the documents, and then step away so Ethan could sign as the face of the project. That was how my family had always used me. I did the part that had to be right. Ethan did the part people remembered. Correct, matches cast, present day 2026. If you've ever been useful to your family but somehow never important, I know that feeling. Like this video and subscribe. Because what happened next took me years to understand. I looked at my mother. She didn't appear nervous. At that moment, she still believed everything was under control. So did Ethan. I handed the binder forward. To explain why that mattered, I need to go back 3 weeks. Bowman Architecture occupied 2 floors of a brick building on Northwest Everett Street in Portland's Pearl District. The studio had exposed beams, polished concrete floors, and long white tables that looked clean only in photographs. In real life, those tables were covered with trace paper, material samples, coffee cups, charging cables, and little cardboard building models with pieces missing. My grandfather Curtis founded the firm in 1976. He started with 1 rented room, a drafting table, and a used blue Ford that leaked when it rained. By the time I joined in 2016, the firm had 40 employees. People in Portland knew the Bowman name. We had restored old warehouses, renovated libraries, designed office buildings, and turned several neglected industrial properties into places where people paid too much for coffee. Grandpa loved old buildings. He used to run his hand along damaged brick and say, "Don't clean away the reason it survived." Ethan could repeat lines like that perfectly. Clients loved hearing them. I usually stood nearby carrying the drawings. Ethan is 3 years older than me. Okay, 1993 versus 1990 equals 3 years, correct. He learned early that our mother liked confidence more than accuracy. If he spoke first and sounded certain, she treated the matter as settled. That pattern started long before either of us worked at the firm. When we were younger, Ethan could forget a family birthday, and Mom would say he was overwhelmed. If I missed a call, she wanted to know why I was being distant. He borrowed my car once and returned it with the fuel light on and a dent near the rear wheel. Mom said, "He's going through a stressful week." When I asked who would pay for the repair, she looked disappointed in me. "Julie, not everything has to become an issue." That was one of her favorite sentences. The issue already existed. I just wasn't supposed to name it. Grandpa was different, although he wasn't openly affectionate. He noticed practical things. When I earned my architecture degree in 2015, he gave me his old metal scale ruler. The numbers were worn away near the ends. He placed it in my hand and said, "You finish what you start." That was the entire speech. I kept the ruler in the top drawer of my desk. Ethan had enrolled in architecture school years earlier. My family spoke as if he'd graduated, but I'd never seen his diploma. I didn't think much about that. He'd joined the firm before me and knew everyone. Mom introduced him as our lead designer. I assumed he'd taken some different path through school and experience. That sounds naive now. At the time, it felt rude to ask. By 2020, I had completed my required experience and passed my licensing exams. I became an Oregon registered architect. Grandpa had died the year before. He was 82. He never saw my license certificate hanging in the studio, although he knew I was close. The last time we spoke about my exams, he was sitting at his kitchen table with a legal pad in front of him. He tapped the pad with his pen. "Get the license," he said. "Nobody can argue with a license." I laughed because people argued with credentials every day. He didn't laugh back. After he died, Mom became the firm's chief executive officer. Ethan remained the public face of design. I became the person whose seal went on our permit drawings. That arrangement didn't seem strange at first. A design firm has different roles. Some people bring in clients, some people develop concepts, some people handle construction details, code requirements, and city review. I was good at the last group. Actually, I was very good at it. I could spend an afternoon tracing an accessibility conflict through 6 revisions and still remember which consultant had caused it. I liked finding the one dimension that would become a serious problem if nobody caught it. Ethan hated that work. He liked early meetings. He liked colored markers, broad gestures, and phrases like guest journey. Once a project reached the point where doors needed clearances and stairs needed exact dimensions, he lost interest. So the work came to me. At first, I thought we were dividing it according to our strengths. Then I noticed Ethan's name stayed attached to every strength. Mine stayed attached to responsibility. The morning the Espinosa planning dinner was announced, I arrived at the studio a little after 7. Rain had darkened the sidewalk. My coat was wet across the shoulders, and I carried my shoes in a grocery bag because I'd walked from the streetcar in boots. Haley Miles was already in the records room. Haley had worked at Bowman Architecture longer than I had. She managed project files, licenses, insurance certificates, archive requests, and the 1,000 small documents that kept a firm from becoming a very attractive disaster. She looked over her glasses when I passed. "Your mother wants everyone in the conference room at 8. What happened?" "Nothing yet." Haley returned to her screen. That meant something was definitely happening. I changed my shoes at my desk and opened the hotel plans. The project was a 12-story building proposed for a narrow site near the river. The ground floor had a restaurant and event space. The upper floors stepped back to protect a required view corridor. Espinosa Group had approached us the previous year. Their owner, Anthony Espinosa, had developed hotels throughout the Northwest. He asked careful questions and took notes while other people answered. I liked him immediately. Ethan thought Anthony was difficult. "He doesn't respond to vision," Ethan said after our first meeting. "He responds to details," I said. "That's what I mean." By 8, the senior project team had gathered around the conference table. Mom stood beside the screen with a printed agenda. "We have confirmation," she said. "The final planning dinner will be Thursday." A rendering of the hotel appeared behind her. It showed warm light spilling through tall windows. There were trees along the sidewalk that didn't exist, under a sky Portland rarely provided. Mom smiled at Ethan. "This is our opportunity to make the client feel the full strength of the Bowman vision." Ethan nodded as though he'd been asked to represent the city. Mom assigned tasks. Marketing would update the presentation book. Our hospitality consultant would refine the guest experience pages. I would prepare the compliance summary and answer any outstanding technical questions. Then she looked directly at me. "Keep it concise. Anthony doesn't need to see how the sausage gets made. I'm still waiting for the mechanical engineer's revised smoke control narrative. Can you handle that after the dinner? No. It affects the permit approach. Ethan leaned back in his chair. Julie, we're trying to secure the contract. We're not submitting to the city over dinner. I know. But if he asks whether the current design works, I need to know whether it works. Mom's mouth tightened. Fine. Coordinate with mechanical. Just don't bury everyone in code. After the meeting, Ethan followed me to my desk. You know she's under pressure. I answered a question. You corrected her in front of the team. She said we could deal with a permit issue later. He picked up a material sample from my desk and turned it over. This is why clients connect better with me. I looked at him. Because I read the code? Because you make everything sound like a problem. He put the sample down and walked away. I watched him stop at the next table and joke with two junior designers. Within seconds, they were laughing. Then I returned to the stair enclosure that had bothered me since the previous afternoon. The planning dinner took place in a private room at a restaurant near the studio. There were 12 of us around the table. Anthony sat at one end with his development director. Mom sat beside him. Ethan took the other end where he could stand easily when the presentation began. I sat halfway down, between our project manager and the fire protection consultant. The dinner started normally. There was bread, a chopped salad, and small plates nobody touched because Mom had scheduled the presentation between courses. Ethan stood by the screen and described the hotel as a new civic threshold. I had never heard him use that phrase before. Anthony seemed interested. He asked about the entrance, the event space, and the relationship between the hotel and the riverfront. Ethan answered smoothly. Most of his answers came from a design memo I'd written the week before. Then Anthony asked about the view corridor setback. Ethan paused. I saw him search the rendering for help. The setback creates the upper terrace, he said. Anthony looked at the image. Did the terrace create the setback? Or did the required setback create the terrace? Our project manager lowered his eyes. I answered before the silence became embarrassing. The setback was required. We used the remaining floor plate to create the terrace rather than treating the reduction as lost area. Anthony turned to me. That makes sense. Ethan gave a quick laugh. Exactly. That's the design opportunity I was talking about. The presentation continued. Every time Anthony asked for a specific detail, Ethan looked toward me. Sometimes he said my name. More often, he said, Julie can give you the technical version. I explained the loading access. I explained the stair separation. I explained why the ballroom ceiling couldn't be raised another 2 feet without affecting the floor above it. Near the end, Anthony asked who had resolved a conflict between the service elevator and a structural brace. I did, I said. Ethan spoke at the same time. We did. Anthony glanced between us, then made a note. Mom noticed. After dessert, Anthony and his director left first. The consultants followed. That left Mom, Ethan, our project manager, and me in the private room. A server collected coffee cups around us. Mom waited until the door closed. Julie, you need to be more aware of presentation roles. What does that mean? It means Ethan was leading the meeting. Anthony asked questions, and Ethan was answering them, not all of them. Ethan rubbed his forehead. See, this is what I mean. You don't know when to let something breathe. I looked at him. You didn't know why the building steps back. Of course I knew. You said the terrace created the setback. That's not what I said. The project manager studied the table. Mom reached across and touched my wrist. Her voice became gentle, which was usually worse. You are extremely valuable to this firm. I waited. She continued. But value doesn't always look the same. Ethan carries the vision. You make sure the paperwork supports it. The word sat there. Paperwork. The drawings I had spent months coordinating were paperwork. My seal made them legal, but that was apparently paperwork too. I pulled my wrist away carefully. The code work isn't separate from the design. No one said it was. You just did. Mom looked toward the door. I'm not doing this here. I hadn't raised my voice. She had. Ethan poured the last of the water into his glass. Why does it matter who gets credit if we all benefit? I looked at him for several seconds. Would you be comfortable asking yourself that? He stopped pouring. Mom gathered her papers. That's enough. I knew what came next if I kept going. I had seen it before. Mom would call me emotional. Ethan would become calm and wounded. By the following morning, I would lose some visible part of the project because I had made collaboration difficult. So I put my notes into my bag. "Good night," I said. I walked back to the studio because I'd left my permit set open on my desk. The rain had stopped. The streets shone under the traffic lights. Through restaurant windows, I could see people leaning over tables and talking with their hands. At the office, only the cleaning crew remained. I sat at my desk, opened the hotel file, and worked until almost midnight. That was my ordinary response to being diminished. I made myself more useful. For 6 years, it had never helped. A few days later, marketing delivered the first printed copy of the Espinosa presentation book. It was thick, glossy, and expensive. The cover carried our logo above a gold line. Inside were photographs of completed projects, design statements, staff profiles, and several full-page renderings of the proposed hotel. Mom had left a note asking me to check the technical captions. I took the book into a small meeting room and started from the beginning. On the first completed project, the credit read, Ethan Bowman, lead architect. I turned the page. The second project carried the same credit. So did the third. I had worked on all of them. On one, I had redrawn the entire core after discovering that the original stair layout failed. On another, I had spent 4 months handling city corrections after Ethan promised the client an occupancy date nobody had verified. The fifth project was the renovation we completed in 2021, our first major job after I received my license. The book called it Ethan Bowman's Sensitive Reimagining of an Industrial Landmark. My name wasn't in the project description. I checked the staff section. Ethan had a full page. His title was Lead Architect and Design Principal. Below it was a photograph of him standing beside a model I had built. I found my own profile near the back. It was 3 sentences long. My title was Technical Director. It said I managed documentation, regulatory coordination, and project delivery. It didn't say I was a registered architect. I went through the book again, slower this time. My name didn't appear on a single project. Not once. I carried the book to Mom's office. The door was open, but she was on the phone. She covered the receiver. "What is it? Why doesn't this say I'm an architect?" She glanced at the book. "We've already approved the staff language. It calls Ethan lead architect. He is the lead. He isn't the architect of record." Her expression changed slightly. Not confusion, annoyance. "Julie, those pages are for clients. Your credentials are in the proposal appendix." I opened the appendix. There was a list of professional registrations near the insurance information. My name appeared once in small print beside my Oregon license number. That's not the same thing, it's accurate. The book credits Ethan with projects carrying my seal. Mom lowered her voice. "Your seal is an administrative requirement." "No, it isn't." The person on her phone said something. Mom looked toward the window. "I have to finish this call. Does Anthony think Ethan is licensed?" She stared at me then. For a moment, neither of us spoke. I had asked the question because I expected her to correct my wording. I expected her to say that of course Ethan was licensed, or that his registration was in another state, or that I had misunderstood his title. Instead, she moved the phone back to her ear. "We'll discuss this later." She turned her chair away from me. I stood there with the presentation book against my chest. That was when I started paying attention. I didn't return to my desk right away. I took the presentation book into the conference room and closed the door. Then I opened my laptop and searched the Oregon Licensing Board's public database. I typed my own name first. Julie Bowman appeared with my registration number, active status, and original issue date in 2020. That was exactly what I expected. Then I typed Ethan's name. No result appeared. I changed the spelling. I searched by last name only. There were several Bowmans, including me, but no Ethan. That didn't prove what I wanted it to prove. People held licenses in different states. Some registrations lapsed. Some architects worked under another firm's responsible control while they transferred credentials. There were explanations that didn't involve my mother lying to clients. I opened Washington's database. No Ethan. Then California. Nothing. I stopped there. This wasn't a useful way to investigate. I didn't know where he'd studied, what degree he'd earned, or whether he'd ever claimed registration in a state I hadn't checked. What I knew was narrower. My mother had avoided a direct question. The marketing book called Ethan a Lead Architect. The licensing appendix listed only me. I took out my phone and photographed every page that credited him. Then I photographed my profile in the registration appendix. I didn't know what I was going to do with the pictures. I only knew I didn't want the book revised later and everyone telling me I'd misunderstood it. After that, I opened the shared project directory. Bowman Architecture had changed software twice since I joined, but the folder structure was almost as old as the firm. Every project had numbered sections for contracts, design, permits, construction, correspondence, and closeout. The first project in the marketing book was a mixed-use building in Northwest Portland. I opened its permit folder and found the final drawing issue. The cover sheet showed my name beside the architect's seal. I already knew that. I had applied the seal myself. I opened the client presentation folder next. It contained renderings, floor plans, and an abbreviated drawing set prepared before construction. The cover sheet used the Bowman Architecture logo where my seal appeared on the permit version. That was normal too. A presentation set wasn't a permit set. It didn't need a wet seal. What wasn't normal was the document properties. The presentation file listed Ethan as author. I clicked through the revision history. The file had been created from my drawing set. My title block had been removed. Ethan's project statement had been added. Then marketing exported it under his name. I checked another project. Same sequence. My permit drawings became his presentation material. I went back to the oldest project in the book, the 2021 renovation. The digital archive for that one was messy. There were duplicate folders, missing links, and scanned meeting notes saved as photographs. I found the issued permit set after several minutes. My seal was on the first page. My signature crossed the bottom edge in black ink. The file name ended with the words, "Original for filing." The client folder contained a cleaner version, no seal, no signature, no individual architect's name. That file alone wasn't wrong. What bothered me was the date. The clean client copy had been created 3 days after the permit set. Someone had taken the completed drawings, removed the professional information, and generated a separate copy after the legal version already existed. I opened the project emails and searched my name. There were hundreds of results. I narrowed them by date until I found the week those files were created. One email came from a former marketing coordinator. I read it twice. The email didn't say why the stamp block had been removed. Presentation drawings often excluded seals. There could still be an ordinary explanation, but the instruction had come from Mom. I saved the email as a PDF in a folder on my personal encrypted drive. Then I sat back and looked through the conference room glass. Ethan was near the materials library with a group of designers. He held a tile sample in each hand while they listened to him compare colors. Mom was still in her office. I could have walked in and shown her the email. I nearly did. Then I imagined the conversation. She would say I was taking a routine production decision personally. Ethan would say I didn't understand marketing. They would ask why I was searching old emails during working hours. By the end, my questions would become the problem. I closed the project files. That afternoon, Mom appeared beside my desk with 2 coffees. She set one near my keyboard. I don't want this morning to sit badly between us. I looked at the cup. She'd brought the kind I usually ordered, plain coffee with a little cream. Then answer the question. She pulled over an empty chair. What question? Does Anthony think Ethan is licensed? She pressed her lips together. Anthony understands Ethan's role. That wasn't my question. You're being very literal. It's a licensing question. Literal is appropriate. She glanced toward the nearest desks. 2 people were working within hearing distance. Can we not do this in the middle of the studio? We can use your office. I have another meeting. Then tell me yes or no. Mom folded her hands in her lap. Anthony has received our full proposal. The proposal contains accurate professional information. In the appendix, yes. Does he know Ethan isn't listed as a registered architect? She gave me a tired look. You are listed. Again, she answered a question I hadn't asked. I waited. Mom picked up the coffee she'd brought me and moved it farther from my drawings, as though the cup's position suddenly mattered. Ethan has never represented himself as the architect of record. The book calls him lead architect. That's an internal title. It's in a client book. It describes his design leadership. Why doesn't my profile say I'm an architect? It says technical director. That isn't the same. It's a senior title, Julie. She leaned closer. You keep hearing disrespect where none is intended. I looked at her hand resting beside my keyboard. Her nails were perfectly shaped and painted a pale neutral color. She had probably come over expecting me to accept the coffee and let the subject die. Change my profile, I said. She blinked. Excuse me? Change it to registered architect and technical director. We're past the editing deadline. The book hasn't gone to the client. The language has been approved. By you, by marketing and me. Then approve different language. Her face became still. I had asked for something small. That was why her reaction mattered. If my omission had been accidental, changing 3 words would have fixed it. Instead, she stood. We'll revisit staff titles after the Espinosa closing. When is that? At the anniversary gala, assuming the final contract language is settled? That's weeks away. Yes, and everyone is working extremely hard to get us there. She smoothed the front of her jacket. I need you focused. I am focused. On the project. She walked back to her office without taking either coffee. I left the cup untouched until it went cold. At 5, most of the studio emptied. I stayed and made a list. I started with every project I'd sealed since becoming licensed. I used billing records because those were harder to alter than marketing files. There were 23 projects large enough to require full permit sets. I wrote the project name, year, client, project lead, and filing jurisdiction. Next, I checked the firm's website. 17 of those projects appeared in the online portfolio. Everyone credited Ethan as lead architect. My name appeared on 4 project team pages, all under technical coordination. I printed the portfolio pages to the secure printer near accounting. I waited beside it so nobody else could collect them. The pages were still warm when they came out. I put them in a plain folder and carried them downstairs to the archive. The physical archive occupied 2 connected rooms behind records. One held recent project binders in rolling shelves. The other held older boxes, microfilm, drawing tubes, and flat files from Grandpa's years. Haley had gone home, but my badge opened the first room. The second had an older lock. I stood there looking through the narrow window in the door. Inside, rows of gray boxes filled the shelves. Handwritten dates ran along their sides. Grandpa had kept almost everything. The following morning, I arrived before Haley and waited near the records desk. She came in carrying a canvas lunch bag and a paper cup. "You look official," she said. "I need access to the historical archive." "For what?" "I'm checking our presentation standards." She unlocked her desk drawer and took out a ring of keys. "How historical? As far back as we have filing procedures. That could mean 1976. That's fine." Haley studied me. She was good at noticing when someone asked an ordinary question too carefully. "Did Donna send you?" "No." That answer appeared to satisfy her more than yes would have. She stood and motioned for me to follow. The old archive smelled like cardboard, dust, and the faint chemical odor of aging drawings. Haley switched on 2 fluorescent lights. One flickered before settling. "Don't move boxes without updating the location sheet," she said. Curtis numbered everything according to his own system. "What system?" "Mostly chronological, except when it wasn't." She pointed to a metal cabinet. "Office procedures are in there. Project records start on the north wall. The flat files are organized by building name. Did Grandpa keep client presentation sets?" if they came back. What does that mean? Some clients returned marked copies, some kept them, some probably threw them away. She handed me a key. Lock up when you're done. I began with the procedure cabinet. The top drawer contained employee manuals from the last 2 decades. The lower drawers held older binders assembled with metal posts. Their labels had been typed on paper, cut into strips, and taped to the spines. I found one marked Drawing, Issue, and Filing Standards. The first pages dated from the early 1980s. Later revisions had been inserted behind colored dividers. Grandpa's notes appeared in the margins. His handwriting leaned forward and became smaller when he ran out of space. The original rule was straightforward. Permit originals carried the responsible architect's seal and signature. Copies intended for the building authority reproduce that information. General client copies did not. A handwritten note explained why. Keep signed originals in project file. Do not circulate. Replacement requires new signature. In those days, a stamp set was a physical object. If it disappeared, somebody had to produce and sign another one. Grandpa's rule protected the legal original and reduced confusion. I kept reading. Later revisions allowed scanned permit sets, but the basic process remained. The architect's seal went on the filing copy. Client presentation sets used a clean title block. There was nothing sinister in the original policy. It was an old administrative habit. I almost felt relieved. Then I found a revision dated shortly after I became licensed. It wasn't in Grandpa's handwriting. The typed instruction said, all externally distributed drawing packages must use approved client title block. Individual registration information is limited to jurisdictional submissions and internal compliance files. At the bottom were 2 approval initials. One belonged to Haley. The other was DB Donna Bowman. I took a photograph. Then I checked the previous revision. It had been approved years earlier by Grandpa and Haley. That version allowed the project architect's registration information to remain on record, copies requested by clients. The newer language removed that option. It didn't mention me. It didn't mention Ethan. Still, the timing bothered me. The rule changed after my license became active. I carried both binders to the archive table and compared them line by line. Around 10, Haley came in with a clipboard. Find what you needed. Maybe. She updated a box number on the shelf. I held up the newer procedure. Why was this changed? She came over and read the section. That was part of the brand standardization. Who asked for it? The marketing department, I think. Why did it need records approval? Because marketing wanted clean copies, and records needed to know which version belonged where. Did we have problems with seals appearing on client sets? Haley thought about it. Not that I remember. Then what were we fixing? She looked at the initials again. You'd have to ask Donna. I did. What did she say? That it was accurate. Haley gave me a brief, puzzled look. Before she could ask what I meant, someone called her name from the other room. She set the clipboard against her side. Don't lose those, she said. They're the only complete copies. After she left, I photographed the full revision, including the approval page and date. Then I returned to the project boxes. I chose a public library renovation from Grandpa's later years. The file contained a sealed permit cover sheet, construction correspondence, and a client booklet. Grandpa's name appeared in the client booklet, not his seal, just his name and title. Curtis Bowman, Architect. I checked another box. Same thing. The clean title block had never required the architect to become anonymous. The rule kept seals off presentation copies. It didn't keep names off them. That part had happened later. I spent the rest of the morning comparing older projects to mine. Grandpa appeared as architect in brochures, client sets, meeting records, and completion books. Other licensed architects who had worked under him were named too. After 2020, the pattern changed. My seal remained in permit files. My name disappeared from everything made for clients. Ethan's name moved into the space where the architect's name used to be. At noon, I returned the binders and updated the location sheet exactly as Haley had asked. Back at my desk, Ethan had left a yellow note on my keyboard. Need code summary for Anthony. Keep it high level. I read it, then opened the file he wanted. The summary was for a call scheduled the next afternoon. Ethan had been invited. I hadn't. I sent him a message. Please forward the meeting invitation. I'll explain the code items directly. 3 dots appeared, then disappeared. A minute later, he walked over. It's not a technical call. You need my technical summary, so I can answer if it comes up. If it comes up, I should be there. He lowered his voice. Why are you making everything territorial this week? I'm asking to attend a meeting about my work. Our work. Then there shouldn't be a problem. He looked toward Mom's office. I'll ask her. You don't need permission to add the person who wrote the summary. His jaw shifted. You've been in a mood since the dinner. I'm available tomorrow afternoon. I turned back to my screen. He stayed beside my desk for a few seconds, waiting for me to soften it. I didn't. The invitation arrived 20 minutes later. That was the first thing I changed. It wasn't much. My name was still missing from the book. Ethan was still leading the call, but I had stopped handing him answers and disappearing. The next afternoon, I joined the call from a small meeting room beside the materials library. Ethan was already there. He had connected his laptop to the screen and arranged printed renderings across the table. He looked at the chair beside him. You can sit there. I was planning to. So we're not talking over each other. We won't if you don't answer questions you can't answer. He gave me a flat look. The video call connected before he could respond. Anthony appeared from a conference room in his own office. His development director sat beside him. 2 members of his construction team joined from separate locations. Ethan began with the hotel exterior. He repeated several points from the planning dinner. The view corridor had become an opportunity. The upper terrace created a distinct guest experience. The building responded to the river. Anthony listened without interrupting. Then his construction manager asked about the south stair. Ethan glanced at me. I waited. He cleared his throat. Julie can walk you through the technical piece. I shared my screen and opened the relevant plan. The original enclosure crossed the maximum allowable travel distance, I said. We shifted the stair east and separated it from the ballroom service corridor. The construction manager asked, does that affect the kitchen loading path? It did in the earlier version. We widened this section and moved the storage wall. I highlighted the area. That keeps the service route clear without reducing the exit width. Anthony leaned toward his camera. Was that resolved before the planning dinner? Yes. He looked at Ethan. Why wasn't it in the presentation? Ethan smiled. We didn't want to overload the room with technical details. Anthony looked back at the plan. I like technical details when they change walls. Nobody said anything for a second. Then his development director asked me to explain the view corridor calculation. I opened another sheet. For the next 20 minutes, most of the questions came to me. Ethan tried to step in twice. Both times, the construction manager asked for the specific drawing reference, and Ethan handed the answer back. Near the end, Anthony said, Julie, will you be on the coordination calls going forward? Yes, I said. Ethan said, as needed. Anthony looked between our 2 images on his screen. I'm asking for her to be included. Of course, Ethan said. She's an important part of my team. My hand tightened around the pen under the table. I didn't correct him. Anthony thanked us and ended the call. The screen went black. Ethan unplugged his laptop. You enjoyed that? I answered questions. You could have made it feel more collaborative. You introduced me as support and then couldn't explain the stair. I could explain it. You didn't. He stacked the renderings with sharp, quick movements. This is exactly what Mom was talking about. What part? You make people feel stupid. I didn't make you come to a technical meeting unprepared. He pushed his chair back. For someone who claims she doesn't care about credit, you've become very interested in being seen. I've never claimed I don't care about credit. He stopped. I think that surprised him. For years, he had mistaken my silence for agreement. The distinction had never mattered while the silence continued. He gathered his papers. Anthony wants 1 point of contact. He just asked for me. He asked for you to be included. I'm still leading the project. Then lead it. He left the room without answering. 10 minutes later, Mom sent me a message asking me to come upstairs. Her office was on the second floor, separated from the studio by a glass wall. Grandpa had used the same room, although it looked different then. He kept project models on the windowsill and pencils and old coffee tins. Mom had replaced everything with pale wood and framed photographs. One photograph showed the three of us at the firm's 40th anniversary. Ethan stood beside her. I was half a step behind them, holding a plaque Grandpa had just received. Mom closed the door after I entered. "What happened on the Espinoza call?" Anthony asked me questions. "I heard you put Ethan in a difficult position." "From Ethan? Does it matter?" "Yes." She sat behind her desk. "Julie, this contract affects everyone in this firm." "I know." "Then act like it." I remained standing. "What would you like me to do differently?" "Support the presentation lead." "I did." "You contradicted him." "When?" "He said you'd attend coordination meetings as needed. You made it sound as if he was excluding you." I said yes when Anthony asked if I'd attend. Mom took a breath. "You know what I mean. I really don't." She opened a folder in front of her, then closed it again. "Your brother is excellent with clients. You are excellent with implementation. Neither role is less important. Only one role gets named. We discussed the book. You ended the discussion. Because you weren't listening. I asked for my correct professional title. And I told you we would revisit it. After the contract is signed. Yes. Why after? Because I'm not changing team language in the middle of negotiations. The language is wrong now. It isn't wrong. Then why won't you put it in front of the client? Her eyes moved toward the glass wall. Ethan was visible downstairs, speaking with the hospitality team. Mom lowered her voice. Your timing is becoming a concern. My timing? You're raising old resentments while we're trying to close the largest contract we've had in years. This started with the current presentation book. No, this started a long time ago. She said it before she could stop herself. I waited. Her fingers moved to the edge of the folder. What started a long time ago? You and Ethan have always competed. We weren't discussing childhood. It's the same dynamic. He gets introduced as an architect. My registration goes in an appendix. That isn't a childhood dynamic. Mom's chair creaked as she leaned back. You have a respected position, a good salary, and long-term security here. None of those things answered me. She continued, there are people in this firm whose jobs depend on this project. I need to know you won't create confusion for the client. What confusion? Questions about leadership. Maybe the leadership is confusing. That landed. Mom looked at me for several seconds. Then she opened the folder and slid a printed sheet across the desk. It was the Gala program. Ethan's name appeared beneath a section called The Next 50 Years of Bowman Design. He was scheduled to speak before the contract signing. My name appeared near the bottom under acknowledgments. I was listed with the project managers, consultants, and event committee. Is this final? I asked. Almost. What is Ethan speaking about? The firm's design future. Did he write the speech? Marketing is helping him. Am I part of the future? She looked tired again. This is what I mean. I placed the program back on her desk. No, this is what I mean. She didn't answer. I left before she could tell me I was being difficult. Downstairs, I found a calendar invitation for every remaining Espinoza coordination call. Anthony's development director had added me himself. I accepted all of them. Then I returned to the hotel plans. The second permit submission was due that Friday. The county had requested corrections to the fire service access plan and exterior wall details. I spent the next 2 days coordinating revisions. Ethan attended one meeting, arrived late, and left after 15 minutes because a photographer was waiting to take his portrait for the gala materials. On Friday morning, I printed the corrected sheets in the large format room. Haley came in while the printer was cutting the last page. Is that Espinoza revision 2? Yes. I need the signed cover and index before noon. I'll bring them down. Use black ink. The last scan made blue look gray. I always use black. I know. I'm saying it. because if I don't say it, somebody will use blue. She took a cardboard tube from the supply rack. Marketing also wants an unsealed set. For what? Gala display. Who requested it? She checked her clipboard. Ethan. Of course he had. I watched the final sheet slide into the tray. Does the display set need a title block? They sent their own. What does it say? Haley looked at me over the clipboard. You'll have to ask marketing. I signed and sealed the permit cover sheet at my desk. Applying the seal was ordinary. I checked the project number, date, and drawing issue. Then I pressed the metal embosser into the paper and added my signature. I had done the same thing for years. That day, I noticed how clearly my name appeared. Julie Bowman, registered architect, Oregon license number. It was the most direct statement anywhere in the building, and almost nobody saw it. I brought the sheets to records. Haley checked the cover, then spread the index across her counter. You caught the wall detail change? Sheet 7.2. She found the reference and marked her checklist. Good. I'm refiling the second submission this afternoon. Don't we upload electronically? We upload the scan. The county still requires the original stamped certification package for this review. What happens to it after? They log it, scan their copy, and return ours. To the vault? Where else? She smiled as if I'd asked whether rain was wet. The important copy never leaves the vault for long. Clients get renderings. The county gets the real one. I didn't respond. Haley kept working. She separated the stamped cover from the rest of the set and placed a protective sheet over it. I looked through the open door behind her. The project file vault had compact shelves and a checkout station. Several black binders stood upright on a cart. Do we keep an original for every project? Every permitted project? Even after closeout? Especially after closeout. Why especially? Claims, renovations, ownership changes. Somebody always needs to prove what was approved. She clipped the certification page to the cover. People treat records like storage until they need one. Then suddenly it's the most important room in the building. Can clients request the stamped original? They can request a copy. The original stays under records control. Do they request it? Not often. How often? Haley paused. I don't know. Almost never. Why not? Most clients don't care about the filing set. They want the drawings they can understand. The answer was reasonable. So was Grandpa's old rule. That was what made the whole arrangement hard to see. Each piece made sense on its own. The sealed original stayed protected. Clients received cleaner drawings. Marketing used a design lead's name. My credentials appeared in an appendix. Only when I put the pieces together did the shape change. There were 2 versions of every project. One version went to clients, award committees, photographers, and the firm's website. That version belonged to Ethan. The other went to the county and returned to a locked room. That version carried my name. Haley slid the set into a temporary file sleeve. I'll need your digital signature certification too. I sent it this morning. I haven't checked email. She tapped the file against the counter to straighten it. Anything else? I wanted to ask if she knew. I didn't know what that question would mean yet. Can I see the transmission history for the 2021 renovation? Which one? I gave her the project number. She typed it into the record system. The physical file is closed. I know. What do you need? Every external issue. That's a lot of paper. Digital is fine. Haley clicked through several screens. Some of this was migrated from the old database. It may not be complete. Send whatever exists. She entered my name as the requester. Donna's going to ask why you're pulling closed files. Does she get notified? Department heads receive a weekly archive report. I hadn't known that. When does it go out? Monday morning. It was Friday. I nodded. Send it. Haley looked at me again, more carefully this time. Is there a problem with the project? I'm trying to find out. She didn't ask anything else. The transmission log arrived that afternoon. It showed drawing packages sent to the client, contractor, consultants, city reviewers, and county archive. The entries identified file names and issue dates, but several older attachments were no longer available. The client had received 3 presentation packages and 9 construction updates. None of the file names matched the stamped original. I checked the county entry. Original permit certification and sealed drawing set. That file was marked "Returned to firm records after approval." The log suggested exactly what Haley had described, but it still came from our system. If files were missing or labeled incorrectly, I couldn't use one internal report to confirm another internal report. I needed a copy nobody at Bowman Architecture had prepared for me. The county kept public building records. Anyone could request them. I opened the records portal and found the old renovation by address. The permit history appeared with inspection dates, corrections, and final approval. There was an option to request archived documents. I selected the original approved drawing set. The form asked for my reason. I typed "Professional Records Review." Then I entered my personal email address, paid the copying fee with my own card, and submitted the request. A confirmation appeared on the screen. The county estimated 5 business days. I saved the receipt beside the photographs from the presentation book. On Monday morning, Mom stopped beside my desk before taking off her coat. "Why are you reviewing the Hawthorne renovation file?" That was the 2021 project. I wanted to compare the issued sets. For what purpose? The presentation book. She looked around the studio. "Come upstairs." I followed her to her office. Ethan was already inside. He sat on the corner of the conference table with a printed copy of the archive report beside him. Mom closed the door. "If you have concerns about marketing language, you bring them to me," she said. I did. You don't start pulling 6-year-old records, 5-year-old records. That distinction isn't helpful. It's accurate. Ethan picked up the report. "You requested every external transmission." "Yes." "Why?" "I wanted to see what the client received." He exchanged a look with Mom. It was quick, but I saw it. Mom moved behind her desk. The Hawthorne client received everything required under the contract. I didn't ask whether they received everything required. "What are you suggesting?" "I haven't suggested anything." "Then what are you looking for?" I'd already decided not to tell them about the county request, not until I knew what the county actually had. "I'm checking whether our client's sets followed the same credit standards as the current book." Ethan laughed once. "This is about your name again." "Yes." He seemed surprised by the answer. Mom sat down. "We have been more than patient about this." "Patient with what?" "With your sudden need to question decisions that were made years ago. Why was my stamp block removed from the Hawthorne client set 3 days after the permit set was completed?" Mom's eyes stayed on mine. "Because client sets don't carry seals. That was already the policy. Why was a separate file created after the permit issue? Marketing probably needed cleaner graphics. They did. Your email requested it." Ethan shifted on the table. Mom's face barely moved. "If you've already decided every routine choice was directed against you, I can't have a productive conversation. I haven't decided that. It sounds like you have. I'm asking why Ethan is credited as lead architect on a project where my name was removed. Your name wasn't removed. Your seal block was removed. Then where is my name? It's in the project record, the locked project record." Mom leaned forward. "Do you understand how serious this contract is?" "Yes. We have invested over a year in it. We have staffing commitments tied to it. We have consultants waiting for authorization. That doesn't answer me. It should tell you why I won't let a family grievance interfere with closing." There it was again. My professional registration became a family grievance whenever I asked who was using it. Ethan stood. "Nobody is taking your license away. No, you're just taking the work attached to it. That's ridiculous, is it?" He turned to Mom. "I'm not doing this." He started toward the door. I spoke before he reached it. "Are you licensed in Oregon?" His hand stopped on the handle. He didn't turn around. Mom answered for him. "Ethan has never claimed to be the responsible stamping professional." That wasn't my question. Ethan opened the door. "I have a meeting." He left. Mom waited until the door closed. "You embarrassed him. I asked whether he has a license." You knew how that would sound. How should it sound? He took a different educational path. That was the first direct information she had given me. What path? You'll have to ask him. I just did. He doesn't owe you his academic history because you're upset about a brochure. He's using the title architect. He's using the title the firm assigned him. That doesn't make it accurate. Mom pushed the archive report away. Enough. Her voice was quiet. I looked at the report between us. I want the presentation book corrected before it goes to Anthony. No. Then put your refusal in writing. She stared at me. For what possible reason? So there's no confusion about what I requested. I'm not participating in this. You already are. She stood and walked to the window. Below us, people crossed the wet street with umbrellas tilted into the wind. After a moment, she said, I can add registered architect to your internal staff profile after the closing. Why after? Because changing it now draws attention to a dispute that doesn't need to exist. Whose attention? She turned around. You're not listening. I am. That's why I'm asking. Her phone rang. She looked at the screen and reached for it. We're done. I left her office. By lunchtime, my access to the old marketing email archive had changed. I could still open current project correspondence, but the historical search returned an authorization message. I tried the Hawthorne folder. The project drawings remained available. The email subfolder did not. I took a screenshot. Then I checked the PDF I'd saved to my personal drive. It was still there. I didn't ask information technology to restore my access. Any request would go through Mom. Instead, I wrote down the time and the folders affected. At 3, Ethan sent me a draft of his gala speech. The subject line read, Technical check only. I opened it. The speech described Bowman Architecture's next 50 years. It called Ethan the person carrying Curtis Bowman's design legacy into a new generation. My name appeared once. I'm grateful to our technical staff, including my sister Julie, for turning bold ideas into buildable realities. I read the sentence aloud under my breath. Then I kept going. Near the end, Ethan planned to introduce Anthony for the contract signing. The text called the hotel the defining work of my career. I added one comment beside the phrase, project is not yet under final contract. Avoid describing it as completed professional work. That was the only edit I made. He rejected it 6 minutes later. On Thursday afternoon, the county email arrived in my personal account. I saw the notification while sitting in a consultant meeting. The subject line read, Public Records Request Complete. I didn't open it at work. The meeting continued for another 40 minutes. I took notes about ceiling clearances and duct routing while the email sat on my phone. When it ended, I packed my bag and left at my usual time. I took the streetcar west, got off near my apartment, and stopped at a grocery store. I bought pasta, tomatoes, coffee, and a bottle of dish soap. I was trying not to behave as if one file could rearrange my entire life. At home, I put the groceries away before opening my laptop. The county had provided a download link and a certification page. The file contained 186 scanned sheets, permit forms, correction notices, and approval records. I downloaded everything. The first page was the permit summary. The property address matched. The project number matched. The approval date was in 2021. Under Design Professional, it listed Bowman Architecture. Under Responsible Architect, it listed me, Julie Bowman. My license number appeared beside my name. I opened the drawing set. The scan was large, so each page loaded slowly. I waited until the cover sheet became clear. There was my seal, there was my signature, there was the date. The copy had come from the government record, not our server and not our vault. Nobody at Bowman Architecture had chosen what to show me. I zoomed in. The seal block identified me as the architect responsible for the architectural documents. The certification language said the drawings were prepared under my professional control. I knew what those words meant. I had signed them. What I had never done was place that document beside the firm's public version of the same project. I opened the Bowman website in another window. The project page showed photographs of the completed renovation. Beneath the first image was a short description, led by Ethan Bowman, lead architect and design principal. The page credited him with preserving the building's industrial character. It credited him with reorganizing the interior. It credited him with creating the street-level public space. I had drawn all 3 changes. The project team section listed Ethan first. My name wasn't there. I placed both windows side by side. On the left, the county record named me as the responsible architect. On the right, my family's firm named Ethan as the architect who led the work. That was no longer an argument about titles. It was 2 different accounts of the same building, created for 2 different audiences. If you understand why that original mattered, leave the word record in the comments. I printed the permit summary and cover sheet on my home printer. The printer hesitated after the first page. I had to open the paper tray and straighten the stack. That small delay nearly broke my concentration. I stood in my kitchen with one hand inside a cheap printer, waiting for proof that had existed for 5 years. When the pages came out, I spread them on the table. I added the website printout beside them. Then I added the presentation book page I had copied at work. 3 versions. The county said I was responsible. The firm's website said Ethan led the project. The new marketing book repeated Ethan's claim and reduced me to technical coordination. I checked the dates. The permit record came first. The website page had been published after the building opened. Nobody could say marketing had used his name because my license status was still pending. I had been registered before the project was filed. I returned to the public permit portal. The county records covered only some of our work. Other projects were filed through Portland or neighboring jurisdictions. I searched for the next address on my list. The online summary named me as responsible architect. Then the next one, my name again. I checked 6 projects before stopping. Each official record identified my license. Each corresponding website page credited Ethan as lead architect. I didn't need every stamped set that night. The permit summaries gave me enough to see that Hawthorne wasn't an exception. I opened a new document and built a table. Project. Permit date. Responsible architect in public record. Architect credited by Bowman Architecture. I filled in the rows I could verify. Then I created a folder called Professional Record. Inside it, I saved the county certification, stamped cover sheet, public permit summaries, website captures, presentation pages, archive procedure photographs, and the email showing Mom had requested my stamp block be removed. I gave every file a date. I saved the folder to 2 encrypted drives. One went into my desk at home. The other went into the zipped compartment of my work bag. After that, I sat at the kitchen table and looked at the printed cover sheet. I had spent the week wondering whether I was being sensitive about credit. The county record removed that option. My name wasn't missing because my role had been small. My name was present wherever responsibility could not be avoided. It disappeared wherever praise could be assigned. I still didn't understand why Mom had protected that arrangement so aggressively. Favoring Ethan was familiar. Risking the firm's credibility for him was different. Around 9, my phone rang. It was Ethan. I let it ring twice before answering. Hi, did you make more changes to my gala speech? No. Marketing says somebody flagged the phrase, lead architect. Not me. He was quiet. Did you talk to them? No. Mom said you were digging through old files. She showed you the archive report. We're on the same leadership team. I looked at the county cover sheet. Are we? He ignored that. I don't know what you think you're going to find, but you need to stop making people nervous. Who's nervous? People. Name 1. He exhaled. This is what you do. You turn every conversation into an interrogation. I asked one question. You've been asking questions all week, and you haven't answered any. He lowered his voice. I know you think the firm would fall apart without you. I've never said that. You don't have to. Are you licensed anywhere? Silence. Not a bad connection. Not hesitation. Silence. Finally, he said, You don't understand how the profession works outside your little code bubble. Then explain it. My role doesn't require me to stamp drawings. That still isn't an answer. You want a fight. I want a fact. He ended the call. I wrote down the time. Then I searched my old emails for his professional biography. The most recent version said he had studied architecture before joining Bowman Architecture. It didn't name a degree. It didn't name a graduation year. Older biographies were less careful. One described him as architecturally trained. Another called him an award-winning architectural designer. The current website had shortened all of that to lead architect. I searched the firm's insurance documents next, using copies I had received for project proposals. My name appeared under licensed professionals. Ethan's did not. By midnight, I had a list of facts and a longer list of questions. I knew my seal appeared on the official records. I knew the firm credited Ethan publicly. I knew Mom had approved a procedure limiting registration information to government and internal files. I knew she had restricted my archive access after I started asking about it. I did not know when the arrangement began, who first proposed it, or what Ethan had told her about leaving school. Most of all, I didn't know why Grandpa's rule had been changed after he died. His name appeared throughout the old archive. He had never hidden the licensed architect from clients. I opened the firm's current organizational documents. An email from the previous year included our annual corporate authorization. It had been circulated by Kimberly Payne, the outside attorney who handled contracts, insurance questions, and company governance. I knew Kimberly, but not well. She attended 2 leadership meetings a year and spoke mostly to Mom. I found her direct address in the email signature. For almost an hour, I drafted and deleted different messages. The first version explained everything. The second accused nobody, but sounded like it did. The third was 4 sentences. Kimberly, I'm reviewing the firm's procedure for identifying the responsible architect in client materials. Can you tell me whether any corporate or succession documents define the architect of record role? I'm not requesting a legal opinion at this stage. I'd prefer to discuss the filing history privately. I read it once more, then I sent it from my personal account. Kimberly replied at 7:12 the next morning. Please call before you go into the office. I called from my kitchen. She answered immediately. Are you alone? She asked. Yes. Does Donna know you contacted me? No. All right. I need to be clear before we continue. I represent Bowman Architecture. I don't represent you personally, I understand. If you're asking about your own rights against the firm, I may have to stop and recommend separate counsel. I'm asking what company documents define my role. There was a pause. Are you referring to Curtis's letter? I held the phone tighter. What letter? Kimberly didn't answer at first. When she did, her voice had changed. You really don't know. Know what? I think we should meet in person. Her office was downtown, several floors above a bank. I told the studio I had an appointment and arrived shortly after 9. Kimberly met me in reception herself. She was tall, with narrow glasses and dark hair cut just above her shoulders. She carried a thin gray file. We went into a conference room facing the river. She closed the door. Before I show you anything, I'm going to repeat that I represent the firm. I heard you. I'm not trying to be difficult. You're protecting your client. Yes. Is my mother the client? The company is the client. That wasn't my question. Kimberly sat across from me. I can see why you're asking questions. She opened the file. On top was a letter dated in 2018. Grandpa's name appeared at the bottom. Kimberly turned it around and slid it across the table. Curtis asked me to draft this. The letter was only 2 pages. It described the firm's need for licensed architectural leadership after Grandpa's retirement or death. It said I had completed my professional degree, was progressing toward registration, and had demonstrated the judgment required to assume responsibility for the firm's architectural practice. The next paragraph named me as his intended architect of record and professional successor. I read that sentence 3 times. Did he sign this? Yes. Where's the signed copy? In the company governance file. At Bowman? No, I retained the original. Why? He asked me to. Why didn't he give it to me? He planned to discuss the transition after you completed another round of licensing exams. I looked at the date. He died before I passed. Yes. Grandpa had written the letter the year before his death. At that time, I was still logging experience, studying at night and failing one exam section often enough that I had stopped telling people when I retook it. I remembered Grandpa asking me to bring him my score reports. I thought he was checking whether I was serious. He had been planning around me. Did Mom know? Not when Curtis signed it. When did she learn? After his death. How long after? Within a month. I looked up. She's known since 2019. Yes, and she never told me. Kimberly folded her hands. I assumed the two of you had discussed it. We didn't. I'm sorry. The apology was direct. She didn't soften it or ask me to understand anybody's position. That helped more than I expected. I returned to the first page. The letter referred to Ethan too. It said he would remain valuable in design development, client relationships, and business promotion, but could not assume professional responsibility for architectural services. Why does this say he couldn't assume responsibility? Kimberly watched me. Because he wasn't eligible for registration through the path he had been describing. What path was he describing? A completed professional architecture degree. The room became very quiet. He didn't graduate? No. Did Grandpa know? Eventually. When did Ethan leave school? 2012. 8 years before I became licensed. 4 years before I joined the firm. My family had spoken about his education in careful pieces. Ethan had studied architecture. Ethan had come home to work with Grandpa. Ethan had chosen practical experience over academic theory. Nobody had said he left without finishing. Why did he leave? I don't know the personal details. Did Mom know? You'll need to ask Donna what she knew at the time. What do you know? Kimberly removed another document from the file. It was a memorandum she had written after meeting with Grandpa in 2018. The memo summarized why he wanted the succession letter. Grandpa believed Ethan had allowed clients to assume he was licensed. He worried the firm had become dependent on Ethan's public role without establishing who would legally control architectural work after Grandpa could no longer stamp it. He wanted the situation corrected before his retirement. I read the last line. Curtis stated that Julie should not be asked to carry professional liability without corresponding authority. I placed the memo on the table. He knew, yes. Then why didn't he correct it himself? Kimberly looked toward the window. He kept postponing the family conversation. That doesn't sound like him. It did when the conversation involved Donna. That answer hurt because it was true. Grandpa could argue with contractors, city officials, and clients without raising his voice. With Mom, he often let practical arrangements stand because changing them meant a personal fight. Ethan had already become the person clients saw. I was still working toward my license. Grandpa had written down what should happen next, then waited for the right time to say it. The right time never came. What happened when you showed Mom the letter? Kimberly opened a yellow legal pad. I met with Donna after the estate and company files were separated. I explained that the letter wasn't an ownership transfer or an automatic appointment. It documented Curtis's intended professional succession. What did she say? I made a file note. She turned several pages. Donna said the firm had already presented Ethan as the next generation of design leadership. She was concerned that a sudden change would damage client confidence. Client confidence in what? In Ethan. He wasn't licensed. I raised that. What did she say? Kimberly read from her notes. She said, "Clients don't hire a stamp. They hire a vision." That sounded exactly like Mom. Kimberly continued. She said you were better suited to technical leadership and Ethan was better suited to representing the firm. Did she say why I shouldn't represent it? She said you didn't want that role. I laughed once. It wasn't because anything was funny. She never asked me. Kimberly closed the pad. I know that now. Did you tell her the marketing needed to distinguish between designer and architect? Yes. What happened? The website language changed for a period. I remembered that version. Ethan had been called design director for about a year. Then, sometime after I became licensed, his title changed to lead architect. Did you approve the current title? No. Did you see the presentation book? Not until you sent your email. I requested a copy last night. Does it create a legal problem? I'm not giving you an opinion on that today, because you represent the firm, because I need the full facts. I slid the letter back toward her. Can I have a copy? She considered it. You're named in it. I can provide one, but I need to notify Donna. Why? It's a company record. She already knows it exists. Yes. I didn't. Kimberly held my gaze. I understand the distinction. She took the letter to a copier outside the room. While she was gone, I looked at the river through the window. The sky was low and gray. Cars moved across the bridge in a steady line. I thought about the day Grandpa gave me his scale ruler. You finish what you start. At the time, I believed he was complimenting me. Now it sounded like an instruction he hadn't been able to follow himself. Kimberly returned with a copy and placed it in an envelope. I want to ask you something, she said. All right. Why did you start reviewing the filing procedure now? I told her about the presentation book. Then I told her about the revised archive rule, the client copies, and the public record from 2021. I didn't give her my evidence folder. I described only what I had personally seen. She listened without interrupting. When I finished, she asked, Does Donna know you requested the public record? No. Does Ethan? No. Keep the copy you received in a secure place. The directness of that surprised me. Why? Because the company's version and the public filing should be compared carefully. I already compared them, I mean by counsel. Counsel for whom? She didn't answer. I looked at the envelope. Did Mom keep Ethan out front because she thought he was better with clients? That's what she said. That's not the whole reason. Kimberly sat back. No. Then what is? She was quiet for a moment. By the time Curtis died, Donna had spent years telling employees and clients that Ethan would carry on his design legacy. She had also told Ethan that. So correcting the structure meant telling Ethan that his grandfather had selected you for the role that carried professional authority. He couldn't hold that role. Legally, no. Then there was nothing to select. There was still status attached to it. I understood. Mom had spent years building Ethan into Grandpa's heir. Not the owner of the company, necessarily, and not the person doing the regulated work. Something less precise and more important to her. The son who stood in front. The son who looked like continuity. When Grandpa's letter forced a choice between that story and the facts, she preserved the story. Then I became licensed. The firm needed my seal. Mom could have corrected Ethan's title and introduced me honestly. Instead, she put my name where the government required it and kept him where clients could see him. She didn't have to choose between us if she divided the role in two. I carried the liability. Ethan kept the identity. Did he know about the letter? I asked. I don't know whether Donna showed it to him. Did you? No. Does he know Grandpa intended me to succeed him professionally? I can't answer that. Because you don't know? Yes. That was the first time Kimberly sounded uncertain. I put the envelope in my bag. Will you tell Mom we met? I have to tell her I provided the letter. When? Today. I nodded. Then I should go. Kimberly didn't stand. There's one more thing. I waited. I reviewed the current Espinoza agreement after receiving your email. My hand stayed on the strap of my bag. I thought the contract was still being finalized. It is. Most of the business terms are settled. What did you find? There's language in it that I don't remember seeing in our standard agreements. What kind of language? A professional verification condition. I sat down again. Kimberly looked at the clock on the wall, then at the closed conference room door. When can you do that? Tomorrow morning. Will you call me? Yes. I stood again. Kimberly walked me to the door. Before I left, she said, Julie, don't discuss that clause with Ethan or Donna until we speak. Why not? Because I don't yet know whether they understand what they agreed to. Kimberly called at 8:15 the next morning. I have the negotiation file, she said. Can you come back? I can be there in 30 minutes. Use the garage entrance. I'll validate parking. I drove instead of taking the streetcar. The rain was heavy enough to blur the lane markings. Kimberly had the same gray file in front of her, along with a printed contract marked in yellow. She pointed to a chair. "This is the current Espinosa agreement. It hasn't been executed, but this clause has been accepted by both sides. What does it require?" She turned the contract toward me. The section was called Professional License Verification. It required Bowman Architecture to provide the original stamped design documents for review by Espinosa's attorney. The attorney would compare the architect's seal, signature, and license number against the state licensing board's public record. The review had to happen before the final design phase payment could be released. "How much is the payment?" I asked. $2,400,000. I looked up. Kimberly nodded. "The full design build contract is $18 million. This is the final payment attached to the design phase, and it only gets released after the license check?" "Yes." "Whose license does the contract name?" "It doesn't name an individual. It says architect of record. Did anyone ask who that was?" "Not during negotiation." "How is that possible?" "The clause was handled as a compliance item. Donna approved the business terms. I reviewed the legal language. Our insurance information identified you as the licensed professional, but the presentation name's Ethan. The presentation book isn't attached to the agreement, so their attorney has one document suggesting me and a room full of people saying Ethan." Kimberly removed her glasses. "That appears to be the problem." "Why did Espinosa ask for this?" "He had a serious issue with another firm 2 years ago." "What kind of issue?" "An unlicensed designer represented himself as the responsible architect. Another person's seal was used on permit documents, and Espinosa didn't learn who actually controlled the work until a payment dispute." "Did the building have problems?" "I don't know the construction details. I know Espinosa lost money and spent months resolving the professional responsibility question, so now he checks every contract." "Yes, personally?" "His attorney does. Anthony attends." I read the clause again. It wasn't hidden in technical language. It was direct. Original documents, seal, signature, license number, public record. Who negotiated this section? Espinosa's attorney sent it. I revised the timing, but not the requirement. Did Mom object? No. Did Ethan see it? He was copied on the contract summaries. I can't tell you whether he read the full agreement. When is verification supposed to happen? Kimberly placed another document on the table. It was the gala closing schedule. The verification was listed 40 minutes before the public signing. Same building, same night. Mom had arranged the anniversary gala around the contract closing because she wanted reporters and former clients to see Bowman Architecture enter its next 50 years with the Espinosa Hotel. She had placed the license check inside her own celebration. "Why combine them?" I asked. "Espinosa's team is traveling. Donna wanted the contract signed publicly. His attorney agreed to complete the document review immediately beforehand. In a private room? That was the original plan." "Was?" "The latest event schedule places the review at the main signing table after dinner. Donna wanted fewer room changes. Does she know what they're reviewing? She knows it's a closing requirement. That still isn't my question." Kimberly put her glasses back on. "I sent the clause and checklist to Donna. I have no reason to believe she understands the conflict you've identified. Are you going to tell her? I have to advise the company that its client materials may misstate professional roles. Before the gala?" "Yes." That answer should have disappointed me. Instead, I felt relieved. I didn't want the result to depend on Kimberly hiding a contract issue from her client. If Mom corrected everything after receiving clear advice, then at least it would be corrected. If she didn't, that choice would be hers. "What exactly will you tell her?" "That the marketing title needs review and that the architect of record must be identified accurately during verification." "Will you mention my county request?" "No. I don't need it to advise on the current contract." "Will you mention that I contacted you?" "She already knows." I looked at her. "I notified her yesterday that I provided Curtis's letter." "What did she say?" "She asked whether you were considering leaving the firm. Did you answer?" I said I didn't know. I folded the contract page back into place. "Can I have a copy of this clause?" You have project-level access to the agreement, correct? Yes, then you can have the full current draft. She sent it to my work address while I sat there. I opened the message on my phone and confirmed the attachment. What documents count as the originals? I asked. The wet sealed set maintained by firm records, not the county scan? The contract specifically says original stamped documents. Espinosa's attorney rejected electronic verification. Who prepares the binder? Haley. Does she know why? She received the closing checklist from Espinosa's legal assistant. Did marketing receive it? They were copied because they're coordinating the gala. That explained why the request had seemed unusual to them. Kimberly gathered the papers. I'm going to say something that may sound obvious. All right, do not alter, remove, or substitute anything in that binder. I wasn't planning to. I didn't think you were. I need to say it anyway. What if somebody else substitutes it? Records should maintain a checkout log. Should. Verify the procedure with Haley. I stood. Kimberly remained seated. The clause does not give you control of the company, she said. It doesn't make Curtis's succession letter binding. It does one specific thing. It makes the client look at the original. Yes. That was enough. Back at the studio, Mom was waiting in the small conference room beside my desk. She closed the door after I entered. Why did Kimberly give you Dad's letter? Because it names me. It was never adopted. I didn't say it was. It doesn't appoint you chief executive officer. It doesn't transfer shares. It doesn't override the company structure. I know. She seemed prepared for an argument I wasn't making. Dad wrote things down when he was thinking, she continued. Not everything was a final decision. He signed it and gave it to counsel. He was considering a professional transition. To me. After you became licensed, yes. She looked through the glass at the studio. Ethan had already been leading design for years. He had already left school without graduating. Her eyes returned to me. Kimberly told you that? She showed me Grandpa's memo. Mom sat down. That was Ethan's private information. It became relevant when you put his name above mine on licensed work. You don't know what he went through. I know he isn't licensed. Not everyone follows the same path. That phrase doesn't change the requirement. She pressed 2 fingers to her temple. I was trying to protect both of you. How did hiding the letter protect me? You had a stable role. You were building your experience. Ethan had relationships the firm depended on. He had a title the firm invented. He had spent years earning client trust. As an architect? As a designer? Then why not call him that? She didn't answer. I watched her look toward Ethan's desk. For the first time, I saw the arrangement from her side without accepting it. Correcting Ethan's title would force her to tell him that being charming, visible, and Grandpa's oldest grandchild had never made him professionally qualified. Giving me the role Grandpa intended would force her to admit she had chosen family rank over the license keeping the firm open. She had avoided both conversations by making me invisible. I need you not to do anything impulsive, she said. What do you think I'm going to do? I don't know. You've been pulling records and contacting counsel. I asked for information, and now you have it. Some of it. Her face tightened. The anniversary is in 2 weeks. I'm aware. There was the offer. Silence now, discussion later. The same offer she had made about my title. We sit down as a family. When? After the gala. With what outcome? I can't promise an outcome before we talk. Then you're asking me to promise silence in exchange for a conversation you may end whenever you want. I'm asking you to consider the employees. I consider them every time I stamp a drawing. She looked away. I opened the door. Julie. I stopped. Dad loved Ethan too. I know. That was never the question. I went downstairs to records. Haley was labeling 2 black binders. One read, Espinosa Hotel Contract Exhibits. The other read, Espinosa Hotel Professional Verification. I pointed to the second one. Is that the original stamped set? Yes. Can I review it? She checked the clock. I'm taking it to the vault in 10 minutes. I only need 5. Haley opened the binder on the counter. The first section contained the current license verification checklist sent by Espinoza's attorney. The next contained my certificate of registration and the firm's insurance page. Behind those was the original stamped drawing set, not a copy. The paper held the slight raised impression from my seal. My signature crossed the seal block in black ink. I turned the page. My name appeared in the project information box as architect of record. Ethan's name did not appear anywhere on the sheet. Did marketing review this? I asked. They reviewed the binder tabs. The contents? Not with me. Has anyone checked it out? Haley opened the record screen. Only me. Is there an automatic notification if it moves? It requires a badge scan and signature. Who is authorized? You, me, Donna, and the project principal. Ethan? He's listed as project principal. I looked at the binder. When does it leave the vault? The afternoon of the gala. Who carries it? The event checklist says technical staff. Which technical staff? She scrolled. You. That was probably Mom's doing. I was useful enough to carry the binder, but not important enough to appear in the speech. Can anyone replace these sheets with presentation copies? Haley's expression changed. Why would anyone do that? I'm asking whether the binder will be checked when it leaves. I check it. And at the venue? The person receiving it signs the custody sheet. Who receives it? Right now, you. I read the checklist. The final line required acknowledgement by Espinoza's attorney after review. I handed it back. Please don't release this binder without following every step. I never do. I know. I'm asking because the contract specifically requires the original. Haley studied my face. Is that why you pulled Hawthorne? Partly. She closed the binder. You found something. I found the original. She rested one hand on the cover. For a few seconds, she said nothing. Then she turned the binder sideways and showed me the lower edge. A white security label crossed the cover and spine. Haley wrote the date over it, then added her initials. If somebody opens this after I shelve it, the label breaks. Does the client need it opened before the gala? No. Then seal it. She pressed the label flat. I signed the review log and watched her carry the binder into the vault. At my desk, I opened the contract Kimberly had sent. I saved the full draft to my secured drive. Then I printed the verification clause and added it to my evidence folder at home that evening. I checked the Oregon Licensing Board's public record once more. My registration was active. My license number matched the binder. My name matched the contract documents. The arrangement no longer depended on whether Mom considered me a lead. The client had written his own rule. Before Bowman Architecture received the final design payment, Anthony Espinoza had to see the document my family had spent 6 years keeping away from clients. All I had to do was make sure nobody stopped it from reaching him. 2 days before the gala, Kimberly copied me on a formal memo to Mom. The memo recommended correcting Ethan's title in every client-facing document. It also recommended identifying me as architect of record before the Espinoza verification. Kimberly kept the language neutral. She didn't mention favoritism. She didn't mention Grandpa's letter. She described the issue as a conflict between marketing materials and professional records. Mom replied 12 minutes later, "Received. We will address personnel titles after contract execution." That was all. Kimberly responded, "My recommendation applies before execution." Mom didn't answer. The next morning, the final gala program appeared on every desk. Ethan was still scheduled to speak about the firm's future. His biography still called him lead architect and design principal. My name remained under acknowledgments. Marketing had added a full page about the Espinoza Hotel. The page described Ethan's vision for the building and included a photograph of him leaning over the model. I was visible in the background. Only my hands appeared. I took one copy of the program and put it in my work bag. At 10, Mom called the project team into the large conference room for a gala briefing. A diagram of the Leland Ironworks filled the screen. It showed guest tables, the stage, the bar, the press area, and the signing table. Mom moved through the schedule. Doors open at 6. Dinner begins at 7. The anniversary presentation starts at 8. Contract signing is at 8:40. Kimberly raised a hand. When is the professional verification? Mom clicked to the next slide. 8:20. At the main table? Yes, Espinosa's counsel may need privacy. He can have privacy if he requests it. Kimberly looked at the diagram. The review is a contractual condition, not part of the entertainment. It won't be presented as entertainment. You've placed it in front of the press seating. Mom's smile stayed in place. We're not hiding compliance. That sentence almost made me look at her. She still believed compliance meant handing over a binder, watching someone check a box, and moving on to Ethan's signature. Kimberly said, "Then the professional roles need to be accurate. We've discussed that. We haven't resolved it. This is an event briefing, Kimberly." Around the table, people looked down at their programs. Kimberly closed her folder. Noted. Mom continued assigning responsibilities. 2 staff members would greet former clients. Marketing would manage the press. Ethan would remain with Anthony from dinner through the signing. Then she reached my name. Julie will handle technical documents and remain available for questions. Where am I seated? I asked. Mom pointed to a table near the side of the room. With the project team. The signing table was at the front. Who brings the verification binder to Anthony? You do. Where does it go? You place it at the signing table before the review. Who receives custody? Anthony's attorney. Haley's checklist says I'm the receiving custodian at the venue. Mom's eyes narrowed slightly. Then you receive it and place it on the table. I need his attorney's signature when I transfer it. Fine. I'll wait until he's present. Fine, Julie. Ethan shifted in his chair. Do we really need to spend the briefing on binder procedure? Kimberly answered before I could. Yes. Mom advanced the slide. After the meeting, Ethan followed me into the print room. He closed the door. What are you trying to do? I'm following the contract. You keep saying that as if the rest of us aren't. Have you read the verification clause? I've read the contract. What does the clause require? He leaned against the counter. This is getting old. It's a simple question. We provide the licensing documents. Whose? The firm's. Firms don't hold architecture licenses. He stared at me. I waited. Finally, he said, You really want to do this at Grandpa's anniversary event? I asked you in a print room. You know what I mean? No. Tell me. He lowered his voice. You want to stand up in front of everyone and make some point about your stamp. I haven't announced anything. You called Kimberly. I asked a company lawyer about company records. You pulled old files. You're demanding signatures for a binder. You've got Mom thinking you're going to walk out before the signing. Are you worried I will? He looked toward the door. The project needs you. That was the closest he had come to admitting it. The project needs an architect, I said. We all know you're the one who stamps. Does Anthony? He has our insurance information. That wasn't my question. Ethan pushed away from the counter. I'm not apologizing because you chose the technical side. I didn't choose to have my name removed. Nobody removed your name. It's on the county record. Exactly. And nowhere the client sees. He reached for the door. You always do this. You wait until something important is happening, then turn it into a test of how much everyone appreciates you. When else have I done that? He couldn't give me an example. He opened the door. Don't ruin this for Mom. Then he left. That afternoon, he emailed me a list of possible technical questions for the gala. There were 4. One asked about the view corridor. One asked about floor area. One asked about sustainable materials. The last asked why the south stair had moved. I answered all 4. For the stair, I included the code section, the original conflict, the alternate compliance path, and the change to the service corridor. I attached the relevant drawing. I didn't want his failure to depend on me withholding information. He replied, Too detailed. Send talking points. I reduced each answer to 3 sentences and sent them back. He never opened the attachment. I knew because the document system showed no access activity. The gala morning arrived clear and cold. I went to the studio at 8. The event crew was already loading displays into a truck. The hotel model sat inside a custom crate. Framed project photographs leaned against the reception desk. Boxes of glossy presentation books were stacked beside the elevators. Haley came downstairs at 11, carrying the verification binder. The security label was intact. She set it on the records counter and scanned her badge. "Check it before I lock the transport case." I opened the binder. My registration certificate was first. The original stamped drawings followed. My seal, signature, and license number were unchanged. I closed the binder. Haley placed it inside a hard black case and ran a numbered plastic seal through the latches. She wrote the number on the custody sheet. "You sign at the venue," she said. "Who has the case until then?" "I do. Has anyone asked to open it?" "Marketing wanted to photograph the binder." "What did you tell them?" "No." I looked at her. Did they say why? They wanted a picture for the anniversary archive of the verification binder. They called it the contract binder. Did Mom ask? Her assistant did. Haley lifted the case. "I'm not opening controlled records for a photograph. Thank you. This is my job. I know." At 5:30, I arrived at the Leland Iron Works. The warehouse had brick walls, steel roof trusses, and tall industrial windows. Grandpa's firm had restored it as one of its first major projects. A large photograph of him stood near the entrance. In it, he was 41, wearing a work jacket and holding a rolled drawing under one arm. Under the photograph, gold lettering read, "50 Years of Vision." The event crew had covered the old concrete floor with dark rugs. Round tables filled the main space. Warm lights shone against the brick. At the far end, the hotel rendering hung behind the stage. Ethan stood near it while a photographer adjusted his position. Mom saw me enter. She crossed the room before I reached the project table. "You're late." "It's 5:32. Staff call was 5:15. My schedule said 5:30. She looked at my dress, then at the leather folder in my hand. "What's that?" "Project notes." "You won't need to make a presentation. I know, tonight is not the time to reopen our conversation. I know what tonight is." She touched my elbow. Her voice softened. "After the signing, we'll sit down. You, me, and Ethan. With Kimberly? If necessary, then schedule it. Julie, I'm here. I'm doing my job." She released my arm. "That's all I'm asking." It wasn't, but I let her walk away. Haley arrived just before 6 with the transport case. We took it to a small room behind the stage. She checked the numbered seal against the custody sheet, cut it, and handed me the case. I signed my name and wrote the time. The binder seal across the spine remained intact. "Espinosa's attorney signs when you hand it over," Haley said. "I have the sheet." She hesitated. "Do you want me nearby?" "Yes." She nodded. Guests began arriving. For the next 2 hours, I spoke to former employees and clients. Several told me how proud Grandpa would have been of Ethan. One retired contractor asked whether I still helped with permits. "Yes," I said, among other things. At dinner, I sat with the project manager, consultants, and Haley. Ethan sat at the front table between Mom and Anthony. The glossy presentation book rested beside every plate. After dessert, Mom walked onto the stage. She spoke about Grandpa, the first office, and the Leland restoration. She described the firm as a family built around one belief, that good design lasted longer than any individual. Then she turned toward Ethan. "My father's vision didn't end with him. It lives in the work, and it lives in the people prepared to carry it forward." Ethan stood. Mom smiled at him. "My son has led Bowman architecture into its next chapter." Applause filled the room. I kept my hands in my lap. Ethan took the microphone. His speech followed the version I had read. He talked about legacy, responsibility, and bold ideas. He thanked the technical staff, including his sister Julie. Then he called the Espinosa Hotel the defining work of his career. He stood in front of my drawings and accepted another round of applause. Mom invited Anthony and his attorney to the signing table. I carried the black binder forward. Haley followed with the custody sheet. Anthony's attorney signed for the binder, but before opening it, he looked at the hotel plans displayed on the screen. "I have one design question first," he said. He turned to Ethan. "Can you explain why the south stair enclosure uses the alternate compliance path?" Ethan smiled. "Well, that was really a team decision." The attorney waited. Anthony waited too. Ethan looked toward the screen. It came out of the broader design strategy. "What part of the design strategy?" Ethan glanced at me. Then Mom looked at me. She motioned me closer. When I reached the table, she leaned toward Ethan. "Let her present your work." I set the verification binder in front of Anthony Espinoza. This time, I didn't move it away. Anthony put one hand on the cover. "Is this the original verification set?" he asked. His attorney checked the custody sheet. "It is." Anthony broke the seal across the binder's spine. Mom's face changed, only slightly. She looked at Kimberly, then at Haley. I could see her trying to understand why the binder hadn't been replaced with the clean presentation version. Anthony opened it himself. The registration certificate came first. He read my name, then turned to the stamped drawings. The paper made a dry sound as he unfolded the cover sheet. He found the seal block. "Julie Bowman," he read. "Oregon Registered Architect, license number 124683. He looked at me. "This is your seal?" "Yes." "Your signature?" "Yes." He turned to Ethan. "Where is your name?" Ethan moved closer to the table. "Julie handles the technical filings." "That isn't what I asked. My role is design leadership." Anthony looked down at the cover sheet again. His attorney pointed to the project information block. "It identifies Julie Bowman as architect of record." Mom stepped forward. "That's our internal division of responsibilities. Ethan leads the design. Julie manages documentation and compliance." Anthony looked at her. "This isn't an internal document." Nobody answered. He took out his phone. His attorney gave him the address for the state licensing board's public lookup. Anthony typed my name into the search field. The result loaded almost immediately. He read it without speaking. Then he turned the phone so his attorney could see. "Active," the attorney said. "The number matches." Anthony searched for Ethan. No result appeared. Ethan's face had gone pale under the warm event lights. "My title isn't tied to stamping authority," he said. His voice carried farther than he intended. People at the nearest tables stopped talking. One of the reporters near the stage lifted her phone. Anthony remained calm. "Are you a registered architect?" "I lead architectural design. That is not the question." Ethan looked at Mom. She moved beside him. "Anthony, this is a family firm. Roles develop over time. Ethan has been the creative lead on these projects for years. And Julie? She ensures the designs meet technical requirements." Anthony looked at the drawing in front of him. "Who designed the stair change?" "I did," I said. He turned toward me. "Why did you use the alternate compliance path?" "The original stair location created an excessive travel distance from the ballroom service area. Moving it solved that problem, but brought the enclosure too close to the loading corridor. I used the alternate path because the revised wall assembly and smoke separation gave us equivalent protection without losing the service route." His construction manager, seated near the front, nodded. Anthony asked, "Did Ethan participate in that decision?" He attended the first coordination meeting. Ethan spoke quickly. "We made the decision as a team." I looked at him. "You left before we reviewed the revised wall assembly." The room became completely quiet. Mom's hand rested against the edge of the table. "Julie, this isn't necessary." Anthony closed the binder halfway. "It is necessary to me." He looked toward Mom. 2 years ago, I paid a firm that let an unlicensed designer present himself as the architect responsible for my project. I'm not doing that again." "This is not the same situation," Mom said. "Then explain the difference." "Our licensed architect has been involved from the beginning." "Involved?" "She's a senior member of the project team." Anthony opened the glossy presentation book beside him. He turned to the hotel page, then to Ethan's biography. "This calls Ethan your lead architect. It's a design title." He found my profile. "This does not call Julie an architect at all." Mom looked at Kimberly. Kimberly spoke evenly. I advised that the titles should be corrected before execution. The sentence landed without drama. That made it worse for Mom. She couldn't claim surprise. She couldn't blame marketing. Her own attorney had warned her in writing. Anthony's attorney gathered the contract pages into a neat stack. The professional verification condition has not been satisfied as presented. Mom said, "You just verified Julie's license." "Yes," he replied. "We also verified that your client materials identify someone else as the lead architect." Ethan pushed his chair back. "This is ridiculous. Julie has always known how the roles work." I looked at him. I knew whose drawings I stamped. "I didn't know Grandpa named me his professional successor. I didn't know you left school without finishing. I didn't know Mom changed the filing procedure after I became licensed." Several people turned toward Mom. She didn't deny any of it. Anthony placed his phone on the table. "My contract proceeds only if it is repapered with Julie Bowman as principal architect of record and primary contact." Mom's mouth opened. He continued before she spoke. "The final design phase payment remains on hold until that is completed. $2,400,000. Nobody needed me to say the amount. The people involved in the project already knew it." Anthony's attorney closed his folder. "As routine due diligence, we'll also refer the firm's public marketing materials to the state licensing board. They can determine whether Mr. Bowman's title and representations comply with professional rules." Ethan stared at him. "You're reporting me?" "We're forwarding documents," the attorney said. "The board decides what they mean." Anthony handed the open binder to me. "I believe these are yours." I took it. Mom stood in the restored warehouse her father's firm had saved, surrounded by the people she had invited to witness Ethan inherit his reputation. There was nothing left for her to manage. The original had already spoken. The contract wasn't signed that night. Anthony and his team left after agreeing to meet with Kimberly the following week. The reporters stayed. Mom refused questions and went into the room behind the stage. Ethan followed her. He didn't speak to me. Haley and I returned the drawings to the transport case. She checked every page, sealed the latches, and recorded the time. Her hands were steady. "So," she said quietly, "that's why you asked about Hawthorne." "Yes." She nodded once. I wondered. Kimberly joined us. "Keep the custody sheet with the binder," she said. Haley held it up. "Already done. For the next 3 weeks, almost every part of the Espinoza project stopped except essential coordination. The final payment remained unreleased. Kimberly supervised a review of our website, proposals, presentation books, and award submissions. The firm removed Ethan's lead architect title from public materials. He was taken out of client meetings while the licensing board reviewed the marketing claims. The board's review took months. I wasn't told every detail, and I didn't ask for special treatment. They had the same materials Anthony's attorney had seen. There was no dramatic raid or criminal case. There didn't need to be. Ethan lost the role built around being mistaken for something he wasn't. Every active client received corrected team information. Projects bearing my seal were updated to identify me as architect of record. Some clients were angry. Most were simply confused. A few called me directly and said they had assumed Ethan was licensed because of how Mom introduced him. That was the part she couldn't explain away as an internal title. The Espinoza contract closed 26 days after the gala. The revised agreement named me principal architect of record and primary contact. Anthony's attorney verified my license again. The final design phase payment was released after the corrected documents were signed. I stayed with Bowman Architecture, but not under the old arrangement. My authority over regulated work was put in writing. Client materials involving architectural services required professional review. Nobody could use my seal while keeping my role out of the room. Ethan remained away from client-facing work during the board review. He never apologized to me. He sent one email saying he hoped I was happy with how things turned out. I didn't answer. 4 months after the gala, Mom asked me to meet her at the studio on a Saturday. She was sitting in Grandpa's old office when I arrived. Curtis's succession letter lay on the table between us. "I should have shown you this," she said. "Yes, I thought I was protecting the firm. You were protecting Ethan's position. She looked down at the letter. I was protecting the story people already believed. That story required my work. I know. She was quiet for a while. Then she said, "I'm sorry." It was the first apology she had given me without attaching an explanation to the end. I let it sit. Finally, I said, "I believe you're sorry now." She looked at me. But the correction already happened. You don't get to replace it with a private apology. I'm not asking to. I won't go back to the old role. I know. And I'm not ready to act like this was one bad decision. Her eyes lowered. All right. That was the settlement between us. Not forgiveness, not a restored family. The truth, stated without negotiation. A week later, the corrected Espinoza presentation book arrived. My profile appeared near the front. Julie Bowman, principal architect of record. Ethan's name appeared in the project history as a design contributor. Nothing more. I took the book to my desk and placed Grandpa's old scale ruler across the open hotel page. For 6 years, my name had been visible only where responsibility required it. Now it was visible where the credit went too. A family can hide your name from a presentation, but they can't erase it from the work you were willing to stand behind. If you stayed with me, subscribe and tell me which city you're watching from.